String functions are used to perform different operations on string values or character values. The way it works is that we'll have a string input value, and then we perform the operation, which then results to a different string or numeric value. So we have an input value, and then you have an output value based on the type of string functions that we perform. Here we have a link to Microsoft SQL string functions documentation. And once we go to this page, we would see the different types of string functions that can be performed within Microsoft SQL. Here we have a list of different functions that can be performed on string values or string characters. In my experience, you most likely won't be using all of those functions. And by the way, these are not all the different string functions that could be used within SQL. Having said that, we will go through the most common ones that you might find yourself having to use. But if for any reason like I said, we won't cover all of the string functions, and you can always find the SQL string functions documentation to see the different types of functions. Perhaps there might be time you're thinking is there a way of performing a particular function or a particular task, or different ways to manipulate string characters. All you need to do is you can actually just Google, and you'll be amazed what you can find when you just search. And I'll also make available this link, so you can just click on the link and bookmark this page if you desire. And yeah, so let's go on and begin to try out some of the string functions. Now, the first thing we need to do is we'll be using a new data set. We'll create a new database, and we'll name the database bookstore. And we have the schema, and you wouldn't have to type any of this out, so just copy, and we'll paste it in the SQL server. So I have copied the schema to create our books table, and the first thing we'll do is to create a new database. Just gonna create some space. So we'll just create database, and we'll call that bookstore. And let's use our new database. Okay. So before we run the query to create the books table, let's quickly go through the schema. So we have our books table, and by the name of the table, obviously this would contain information about books. The first column would be the book ID, which is an integer. We have an identity one, which means we want the values for the book ID to be automatically generated, and the book ID will be our primary key. The second column is the author's first name, which is a variable character, which is varchar. And the maximum character we can have within that column is 100. We also have the author's last name, which is also varchar 100. We have title, which will be the title of the books, varchar. We have the year the book was released, which is year released. We have the genre of the book. We have the pages, so the number of pages of each books. Of each book, we also have available copies, which is how many books do we have available within our library or our bookstore. And then we have reviews, because each of the books do have different reviews, so we want to see how many reviews those books have. And then we have the gender of the author. Okay, let's go ahead and run this query. So that's been created. And now we have and before we insert the values, let's take a look at just take a look at the table. So we make sure We have everything. Execute. So yes, so we have our table, the book ID, author's first name, author last name, title, year released, genre, pages, available copies, reviews, and gender. Okay, so now we can insert our values and execute. 19 rows affected. And now let's view our table again. Okay, so we have our books table and all the values. So like I said, it wouldn't make sense for you to type in all of this information or all these rows of records. So that's why just that you copy it. Now, I haven't said that. I would also want you to insert maybe two more records into the table, and at which point I will provide those records to be inserted. The first string function that we will take a look at is concat. CONCATO is used to join two or more string values together. The syntax for concat is, so we have the keyword concat, and then in bracket or parentheses, we have the values that we want to join together. So we join the string value 1, we join string value 2. Let's switch over to SQL Server to see how this works. I'll launch a new query box, and the first thing I would do is to write out the syntax, just so we have that. So it is concat, and then in brackets we have the, let's say, string 1, we separate comma, we have string 2, and we could have as many strings that we could attach or join together, as many strings that we want. Let's say we have two string values, the first one being hello, and the second value is world. And we want to join those two words together so that we have hello world. How do we do that? So to do that, we use the concat function, and all we have to do is, now I know what we have here as the syntax just says concat, but we have to start with a select keyword. So we have select, and now we start the syntax concat. We open our bracket, and then we write the first word, which is hello, and then the second word that we want to join is world, and we close that. So just to go through the syntax again, we have select. It is mandatory that we include that in the query. And then we have the concat, which again is the function to join or to string together multiple values, one or two or more values. Our first value is hello. Our second value is world. Let's run this. Now, if we look at our results, we now have hello world joined together pretty much as one word. Let's try and join another word. Let's say we want to join, let's just go select concat, and we just want to join, let's see, happy birthday. So we want to join happy birthday together. When we run this, we have happy birthday. Now, clearly, yes, we're trying to join these words together, but we do need a space between hello and world, or between happy and birthday. And the way to achieve that is just by adding a space in between the two values. So we have select concat. So we have, let's go with happy birthday first. So we have the first value, which is happy. And then we put in our quotes, space, quotes, and then the second word, which is birthday. So what we have here is We have happy, which is the first value. We have birthday, which is the second value. To create the space that we need, we just put like a blank. We have our open, we open and close our quotes, but then we just be with blanks or with a blank value. When we run this, now we have the space. We have happy birthday, and we can do the same thing for hello world. So select concat. We have hello, and then we have the space. So we open the quotes, we tab, and then we close the quote, then comma, and then the next value, world. And now we have hello world. All right, so let's go ahead and print out our books table. Books, execute. Okay. And let's see how we can begin to use the concat function to manipulate our table. And the first thing I want us to try is, so right now we have the author's first name column and we have the author's last name column. Well, what if we want to have the author's first name and the author's last name in the same column? So what I mean is, so right now in our books table, we have author's first name column, we have the author's last name column, and we have the title column all separated. But what we want is we want the author's first name and the author's last name to be in one column, and then we have the title. So essentially, we're linking or we're stringing together our first column and our last column into one single column, and then we have our title. All right, so let's go ahead and join two of our columns together. And the word itself is, it's called concatenate. So what we want to do is to concatenate our author's first name and the author's last name. And to do that, all we need to do is just make some space. Well, type. So we have select. We have our keyword concat. The first column is author first name. Now we need a space between our author first name and the author last name. So we open our quote, we space just to create an empty value. We close our quote and then comma. And the second column we need is the author last name. So type author last name and we can close this. Now, for now, we're just going to concatenate the author first name and author last name. We'll take it one step at a time. Once we're done with this, then we'll add the title column as well. And then we go from books. Right, so just to quickly go through this again, go through the query. We have our select, we have the concat, the concat function. We have our first name, which is we open our bracket, we have the author first name. We create a space, which is another value, and then we have our author last name, then from books. So one way to look at this is that this is now one column of its own. Just like when we say select, select author first name, all right, from books. So you can see that right now this author, now we are joining, we're making it one. We have our author first name and our author last name. But essentially what we're doing is we're making these two columns now one column. And because it's two different columns, we're putting it inside of that bracket to sort of separate it. And like I said earlier on, whenever you write a function, a string function, and we'll work with other functions later on in the course as well. We'll work with aggregate functions. But whenever you have function, you have to put those values has to be inside of a bracket. Okay, I'm just going to delete this because we don't need that. So let's run this query. So now if we look at our table, those two columns is now being joined together. And this does not change our original table. All right, this is just printed out based on the query we've passed to the server. So we have our first name, Brian Stevenson, Elizabeth Gilbert, Grant Cardone, John Maxwell, and all of that. So it's now all in one column. And this is where also you begin to see the value of using alias. Because when we look at the title, because we now combine two columns together, it's not, like internally, or the way the system programs it, what's going to be the name of this new column? Because we can't call it author's first name, we can't also call it author's last name, because now we have two columns together. So what happens is that now it says no column name because this is a pretty much a brand new standalone column of its own. Now, what we need to do is, as we've learned how to use aliases, we just say as, and we could just pass that as we could just say as name. Okay, and when we run this, let's do this. Let's say as author's name. All right. So now when we run this, so now it's no more a blank column, like a no-name column. We now have the name as author's name. So the next step, now that we've successfully concatenated the first column and the second column, what we want is we want to be able to see the title as well. So what I've got Brian Stevens um, and the name of the book, Elizabeth Gilbert, and the title of the book as well. Okay, and it's going to be exactly the same code, and I'm just going to copy this and then just paste this. And all we need to do is now for the second column, which is a title, we just have a comma to separate this first column because all of this is now one column. And then we write title. And okay, actually, so this has to be after the alias and title from books. Okay, and when we run this, now we have Brent Stevenson, Saint Just Mercy, Elizabeth Gilbert, City of Girls, Grant Cardone, Be Obsessed or Be Average, and John Maxwell, International Living, and on all the authors. So this is just to sort of recap, with concatenation or with concat, the function concat, you have an input value. In our case is author's first name, author's last name, and then we have the output value, which is what we see here. What if we want to print out something like this? So we have the title of all of our books, and then we want to sort of make a statement that says Just Mercy was written by Brian Stevenson, City of Girls was written by Elizabeth Gilbert, Popular Hibiscus was written by Chimamanda Adichie, The Shadow of the Wind was written by Carlos Zafon. How do we do that? So, and what we have here is we have the title column, we have our first name, author's first name, we have the author's last name, but we also have this column, or not a column, but we also have this statement that has been concatenated with the columns that we have. How do we do this? So we start with select concat, and the first column we need is the title, because we want to say the title, Just Mercy was written by Brian Stevenson. So we start with title, and then we need a space, and then we enter the statement was written by, comma, and we need another space. Now we need the author's first name, comma, we need space, we need the author last name. Now we can close this. From books. Right? So just to quickly go through this, we have the select concat, we have our title, and then we concatenate that with the sentence or the statement was written by. We have spaces in between that. We have our author's first name, and we create a space, and then we have the author last name. Okay, let's run this. So now it's just gonna bring this up. So we see now it says Just Mercy was written by Brent Stevenson. The Shadow of the Wind was written by Carlos Zafón. Born a Crime was written by Trevor Noah. So what we can do also is to add a title to or a name to that column. We just go here and say as, and we can say as books and author, right? Okay. So we can now just run this, execute. So now we have the name of the column as books and author, maybe authors with an S. Okay, so that's how we concatenate columns and also some statement or words that we want to add to make a bigger sentence. We're able to make a sentence out of our columns and other words that we add.